Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Fun with Words Navigating Reading Instruction, Part 2 of the Roadmap to Reading Workshop series. My goal today is to give you some practical tools that you can use right away at home to support your students as they're becoming successful readers. These strategies work whether your child is just starting to read or you're helping an older child strengthen foundational skills. So let's get started. My name is Janelle Martinez, and I am the Early Literacy Coordinator for Sequoia Grove Charter Alliance. I have been a teacher for nearly 4 decades. Truly, in August of 2026, it'll be 40 years. My first teaching job was a second grade classroom, and since then I have taught every grade from pre-K through high school. I've worked in traditional brick and mortar schools, both private and public, and for the past 19 years, I've been working with homeschooling families through independent study charters. I've been with our schools since 2018, and I love it here. I have 3 children and 4 grandchildren, and since dyslexia runs through my side of the family, we have struggled a bit with this whole reading thing, some of us more than others. I've spent a lot of time studying dyslexia, even before it was acknowledged in schools, because I discovered that I am mildly dyslexic. My dad was dyslexic. My older son is severely dyslexic, but he's not the only one of my 3 children who have some symptoms of dyslexia. They all 3 do. When my oldest grandson was in TK, I started tutoring him. He's now 11 and a great reader. And now my second grandson, who was in a charter school in another state, they've decided to homeschool him, and I'm tutoring him twice a week as well. When this job of early literacy coordinator opened up, I was so excited because fostering reading is my passion. And now my job is to come alongside learning coaches and parents like yourselves and help you to help your students as they learn to read, which is the best part of my job. I'm also helping to set up and will be monitoring the new reading screener, which is mandated by the state of California for all kindergarten, first, and second graders in our school. We are not scheduled to talk about Amira today, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me at earlylit@sequoiagrove.org. So, what are we going to look at in this workshop? We are going to look at how children learn to read. We are going to discover the essentials of phonics and decoding instruction, see how spelling and writing connect to reading, explore ways to expand vocabulary and background knowledge. And we're going to gather a toolkit of fun games and activities to reinforce skills. This workshop is going to look more closely at curriculum than the first one did, or the third one will, because you are probably already using a curriculum to teach your kiddos reading and spelling skills. So we're going to address what makes a great curriculum. Let's begin by answering, what is reading? Reading is the process of making meaning from print. Children must connect letters to sounds to form words to gain understanding from what was written. Reading skills develop progressively and systematically, beginning with phonemic awareness and including decoding and comprehension. Reading isn't something that children magically pick up. It is a step-by-step process of connecting letters to sounds and sounds to words. The goal is automatic reading so that children don't have to work so hard at decoding and can then focus only on understanding the text. That's why the early years are so important. You may have heard of the 5 pillars of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. In our last workshop, we focused on phonological awareness, pre-reading skills. This is where most gaps occur that can cause reading difficulties later. If you haven't seen that workshop, or if you just want to review it, it is on our Sequoia Grove YouTube channel. This workshop, we are focusing on phonics and vocabulary. But all 3 of these work together for decoding. These pillars are essential for a strong foundation, because when you're in kindergarten to second grade, you are learning to read. But after third grade, the focus shifts more towards reading to learn. If a child is struggling with reading in third grade and beyond, it impacts their learning. Now let's take a deeper dive into phonics. Phonics is a reading method that teaches reading, writing, and spelling by connecting sounds, phonemes, to letters or letter groups, graphemes. It teaches children the fundamental relationship between spoken sounds and written symbols, allowing them to decode words by blending sounds together, like b, a, t, make bat, or segmenting them for spelling, rather than relying on guessing, context clues, or rote memorization. You may be thinking, well, that's great, but what do you mean by decoding? Well, if you stop to think about it, those symbols that we put on paper, the ABCs, are a code. We are literally code breakers every time we read. That's actually a cool concept to talk about with your kiddos. Is there a difference between phonics and decoding? Technically, yes. Phonics is the knowledge of letter sound relationships, the rules and patterns. Decoding is applying those rules to gain meaning from the symbols. Honestly, it doesn't matter, and the terms are used interchangeably. You may be thinking, just tell me what curriculum to use and we will be set. Well, I'm not going to dictate which curriculum you should use. That is a specific decision for each family. There is no such thing as one size fits all curriculum. So, what we're going to focus on instead is what you should be looking for when choosing a curriculum. And honestly, if what you're using checks most of the boxes but lacks in a few areas, there are ways to supplement it once you know what's missing and what you need to add. A good phonics curriculum includes systematic and sequential orders, teaching skills in a logical sequential order, building from simple to complex. This helps prevent gaps in foundational reading skills. Explicit instruction. It clearly explains and teaches each sound and pattern rather than leaving it for the child to figure out. Good explicit instruction includes direct teaching of letters, sounds, modeling how to blend the sounds, practice examples with corrective feedback. There are a lot of curricula out there that are literally scripted and tell you what to say as you're teaching your kiddos. Multisensory practice. This engages more than one sense: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. This can include tactile activities like sand tray writing, manipulatives such as letter tiles, verbal routines out loud and in your mind. Sensory learning supports memory and reinforces connections. It also has decodable texts. Decodable readers are short texts written to align with the phonics skills taught. They allow children to apply what they've learned to real reading. And we're going to look at these in just a minute. And it has assessment and progress monitoring. You want to know what your child has mastered and what they need to review. Look for built in assessments, checklists, or mastery criteria. Easy to use tools for tracking progress over time. And the big question, does this curriculum work for you? If you are going to dread pulling that box out every day because it's just so much, maybe it's time to look for something more simple. If, on the other hand, you and your child both love the curriculum, great, go with it. Things to avoid in a reading curriculum: a lack of phonics foundations. It relies mainly on look and say or whole word memorization. It doesn't teach sound letter relationships explicitly. These can leave gaps in decoding skills that make reading harder later on. It's unstructured or has haphazard progression. Steer clear of curricula that jumps around skills with no clear sequence, that assumes your child will pick it up without systematic teaching. A structured scope and sequence is crucial for consistent skill building. It has an over reliance on worksheets. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me a good worksheet, and worksheets can support practice. But avoid programs that focus almost exclusively on paper exercises and don't give real reading practice with texts that match the skills taught. Reading should involve meaningful passages to decode, not just busy work. It has no assessment or progress tracking. Be wary of curricula that doesn't include tools for checking mastery. It leaves you guessing about your child's progress. Regular review and assessment help you to tailor instruction and catch gaps early. It's one size fits all. There's no differentiation. Some programs assume that all kids learn at the same pace or in the same way. Avoid resources that offer only a single path of instruction. Don't allow for review, enrichment, or alternate methods. Homeschooling thrives on flexibility. Your curriculum should too. Okay, so we know that decoding is applying phonics knowledge to figure out what the symbols on the page mean. So, what order should these concepts be taught? Many good programs begin with phonemic awareness. If your curriculum does not, please go back and watch the video Fun with Sounds on our Sequoia Grove YouTube channel. As I've said before, many gaps in literacy begin there. As far as actual decoding, first students are going to learn their ABCs, and they need to know both the sounds of the ABCs and the names of the ABCs. Both are equally important. Then they're going to learn vowels versus consonants. Those 5 vowels in our English language are the powerhouses of our language. There is a vowel in every single syllable that we say. Then they're going to learn CVC words: consonant, vowel, consonant. Words like sat, hat, cat, mat. Those are CVC words. Then they learn digraphs and blends. Some programs teach blends first, some teach digraphs first. It honestly doesn't matter. They just need to know the difference between the two. Blends are 2 consonants that are stuck together but still say their same sounds, like S and T still says st. Digraphs are 2 consonants that are together that when they're put together, they actually make a new sound, like S and H makes sh. Then they're going to learn long vowels. So silent E syllables, where the E reaches over a consonant and makes the first vowel say its long sound or say its name. And vowel teams, where 2 vowels are together and what sound they create. And then finally, prefixes and suffixes. Some curriculum goes on beyond that to word origins, Greek and Latin roots, etc., but these are the basics. And syllable types should be taught every step of the way, beginning with CVC words, which are closed syllables. They are closed in at the end with a consonant. Then teach open syllables. There's no consonant at the end of the syllable, so the vowel is then able to say its long sound or its name. Then teach silent E syllables, etc. And now let's talk about sight words. What? Sight words? Didn't we debunk the whole sight word thing years ago? So yes, years ago there was a reading method called whole language learning. It relied on teaching reading by memorizing sight words. All of them. It was a failure, and a couple of generations of students read poorly unless they figured out phonics on their own or their parents taught them at home. So, yes, it's true. You cannot focus only on sight words, but English is hard, and there are a lot of exceptions to the rules. And some words have to be sight words because they just don't follow the phonics rules. For example, the word said. How should we spell said? Right, S-E-D, S-E-D. So why is it spelled S-A-I-D? Well, it has to do with the origin of the word, the language it came from, etc. It's a long story, and honestly, it doesn't matter. Just teach it to your kiddos as a sight word so that they will not only be able to read it, but also to spell it. In the description below, there is a list of some phonics games and activities. And I have compiled a list of sight words by grade level for you as well. This is what that sight words page looks like. These are compiled from Dolch and Fry high-frequency word lists, and they are color-coded by grade level. You can cut these apart and play a game with them. Your student turns over the card and reads the word. If they get it right, they keep the card. If not, you keep it. And they see how big their stack of cards is at the end compared to yours. And if theirs is bigger than yours, they win. I also play it so that if they skunk me and I have no cards at the end, they get a big prize. You can also do this with spelling. You turn over the card and read the word to them, and they write it down or spell it out loud, etc. Okay, so now you've checked your curriculum, you're adding in sight words. What else do you need? Decodable texts. I highly recommend that you use decodable texts that work with the phonics skill that you are focusing on. A recent study showed that the literacy skills of students who used decodable texts were 40% higher than those who did not at the end of a school year. Why? Because they were using and practicing the decoding skills that they were learning. Decodables build confidence and fluency. They support mastery instead of guessing, and they pave the way to transition to regular books later. Plus, there is nothing better than when a kiddo can read the page out loud to you and they look up at you beaming because they read it by themselves. Your curriculum may include decodable readers or reading pages. If not, Bob books are a great option. Or in the description below is a link to a free decodable texts page from Reading Universe. You may have seen this list posted in the Sequoia Scoop last month. Watch the scoop for other ideas that I pass on to families as well. Now let's talk about spelling. Spelling is the reverse of decoding. It is encoding. When children spell, they have to pull apart the sounds and match them to letters. This process strengthens their reading and shows you their understanding of sound symbol patterns. That's why encoding practice is essential to teaching reading. Teaching spelling by patterns instead of memorizing random word lists helps children to understand why words are spelled the way they are. These patterns build predictability and reduce confusion. Almost all phonics curriculum teaches CVC words, digraphs, blends, and vowel teams in that order. Anyone notice anything about the order that spelling patterns are taught? Right, it's the exact same order. However, many spelling programs stop short of teaching the types of syllables. Just as knowing what syllable you're looking at helps with decoding, it also affects the spelling of a word. Spelling rules are vital. That's why I'm including in the description below a list of spelling rules. Please note that this is not all of the spelling rules out there, but these rules are basic and it will give you a good checklist to start with. Oh, and this is a quick example of digraphs. Notice the CH words, the CK words, and CK is a digraph even though C and K both say k, because when blended together they don't say k, they blend together into one sound. NG can be taught as a digraph. Some programs teach it as a unit with a vowel because NG can often tweak the sound of a vowel. PH that says f, and we're going to talk about that one in a minute. Q can be taught as a digraph, or you can just simply teach that Q in an English word is never seen without its buddy U, ever. SH, TH, WH, all standard digraphs. Back to that PH digraph. I do not recommend teaching the PH digraph until a student has pretty strong skills under their belt. PH does not have easily understood rules behind when to use it and when not to. It is entirely based on the language that the word comes from. Many curriculums actually teach PH digraph words as sight words. I'd like to take a minute to introduce you to Elkin boxes. These are often just called word boxes. It's a powerful and versatile tool. The idea is that the student moves one tile into each box for each sound that they hear in a word. So you can use this if you're working on phonemic awareness skills by using blank markers. So, for example, for cat, k, a, t, you would move in 3 different colors of markers. And then you could switch the k for a h and change the color marker, and so on, and just keep switching them out. Then, when students are working on spelling with ABCs, once they know which sounds go with which alphabet letter, this is a fantastic tool to practice spelling the sounds that they've heard. For example, k, a, t, cat. Then they switch out the k for a s, and they have sat. Then you change the t to a sh, and you have sash. Because you want to teach those digraphs as one sound, right? Don't get me wrong, this is not a replacement for handwriting. Handwriting the letters of each sound as you spell them is the best reinforcement your students' brains can have. Physically writing the letters is far more impactful than typing them or manipulating letters with these tiles, so don't skip that step. But this is a great tool for you to use in addition, especially if you have a kiddo who resists writing. Sometimes you write, sometimes you use something that's more fun, like this. And in the description below is a list to some printable Elkin boxes. And also there are links in there to online Elkin boxes that you can use. And I also created an ABC tile sheet that you can print and cut apart and use with the boxes if you like. You don't have to. You can use any flashcards that you already have. You can just draw your Elkin boxes on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, but these are here if you would like to use them. And this is what the ABC tile page looks like. Notice that the vowels are a different color than the consonants as an easy visual cue when you're dividing syllables. Another tool that I highly recommend, an oldie but a goodie, is dictation. Dictation is one of the most powerful tools you can use at home. It brings together phonics, handwriting, spelling, and attention. You start simple with individual words, and then you move to short sentences that use the patterns that your child has already learned. The last thing we are going to look at today is vocabulary. Vocabulary is the secret ingredient to reading. It does little good to sound out a word that you've never heard before and have no clue what it means. And that's not to say that when you read, you don't come across new words, which you then figure out the meaning of from the context. But generally speaking, the bigger a child's language vocabulary is, their spoken vocabulary, the better their reading comprehension is, which is the whole goal of reading. How do you build your child's vocabulary? I'm so glad you asked. First, talk to them. Let them participate in conversations with people of all ages. Natural conversations are one of the best ways and the most natural ways to build vocabulary. Help them create a dictionary. So you could do 1 page per word, or you could just have a page per letter of the alphabet, and whatever letter that word starts with goes on that page. You could try a word of the day and learn a new word, and every time they use that word in conversation, they get to put a penny in a jar. You could have a banned word wall. Now, you are not actually banning these words from your home, and it doesn't have to be a wall. It could be like a whiteboard or even a piece of paper on the fridge. What you're doing is you are trying to get your kiddos to use more expressive vocabulary. So let's say you want to ban the word said. Instead of said, she said, blah, 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 you would say, she whispered, blah, 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 or she yelled, blah, blah, blah. Get it? And then prefixes and suffixes, word parts. If your curriculum does not teach this, get a supplemental curriculum that teaches word parts, prefixes and suffixes, Latin roots, etc., and their meanings, because the meanings are what's going to develop the vocabulary. And this is usually done in fourth grade and up. And finally, games. Here is a list of vocabulary activities down in the description below. You can play them like games and learn new words. One of the easiest ways to develop vocabulary is to read aloud to your child. Reading aloud builds language. It exposes children to complex words and sophisticated language. It boosts comprehension. It improves understanding and retention of complex texts for all ages. Older kids like to be read aloud to as well. It fosters reading for pleasure. Children read more independently if they're read to often. It enhances connection. It strengthens family bonds and provides emotional support. I love to curl up with my grandkids and read stories to them, and they ask me to. The chart on this page demonstrates the decline in frequency of reading aloud to children. Fewer parents read aloud daily compared to previous years. For example, 41% for 0 to 4-year-olds in 2025 versus 64% in 2012. And there's a gender gap. Boys are read to less than girls. Nevertheless, we know that children who are read to every day when they enter kindergarten, they hear 1.4 million more words than those who have never been read to. Reading aloud is essential. Finally, let's talk about what to do when your child gets stuck. Check to see if the phonics pattern is mastered or if it's an underlying thing. And when you've determined what the problem is, go back and review. And you may need to go back several lessons or maybe even an entire unit before you get to the point where they are happy and confident in what they know. And then you start from there and do it all over again. Remember, it's far more important that they master the skills than that they make speedy progress through them. Practice every day in small doses. It is far better for a kiddo to practice every day for 10 minutes than practice once a week for 50 minutes. They will get way more from the small doses. Celebrate progress. Every time they get it right, celebrate. Do not let them guess from pictures. In fact, if you get persistent guessing instead of your kiddo decoding, that is a big red flag. Another red flag is difficulty hearing or manipulating sounds. And some huge red flags would be very slow progress after repeated instruction. If your kiddo is still working on the ABCs after 2 years of instruction and they still don't know all the letters or all the sounds, that could be an indication that the way this kiddo's brain is processing information may need to be looked at. And reversals after third grade. And some people say that it's actually first grade. Somewhere in between first and third grade, they should stop reversing B's and D's, threes and capital E's, etc. If you still have these, very slow progress or reversals after third grade, you may need some extra support for the way this kiddo's brain is processing the information. Please feel free to reach out to me at earlylit@sequoiagrove.org. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you hanging in there with me today, and I hope this was useful to you. If you have any questions, any comments, and you just need to brainstorm ideas, please reach out to me at earlylit@sequoiagrove.org. I look forward to hearing from you.